Hi everyone, welcome to Tent Talk, the Farmers Market podcast. This podcast is all about farmers markets, how to increase your market business success, and in our current climate, maximize safety while providing people with fresh food. Farmers markets are essential. Whether you're a farmers market manager or a small farmer or food maker selling at farmers markets, you have found just the right podcast. This week we're chatting with farmer and former market manager Matt Sylvester about farming and marketing in Northern California. Hey everyone, I'm one of your hosts, Bridget Myers. I've spent years as an on-site farmers market manager, and I'm the education coordinator at Farmers Market Pros.
And I'm Kat Fields-White, Director of San Diego Markets, still an active Farmers Market Manager, founder of Farmers Market Pros, and host of the Farmers Market Pros community, and Intense, the Farmers Market Conference.
And I'm Justine Marzoni-Mead, Tent Talk producer, marketing director for Farmers Market Pros, and logistics coordinator for Intense, the Farmers Market Conference 2021, coming up 1 week from today.
Oh my goodness.
Get ready, team.
Here we go. Well, welcome back to Tent Talk, everyone. Today we are chatting with farmer Matt Sylvester of Happy Acre Farm. Matt and his wife and their young son farm several acres on an interesting property in Northern California, and we're going to chat about their farming and farmers market journeys. Welcome to Tent Talk, Matt.
Hi, yeah. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. I wish you were really here a week from Monday, as you were last year. Matt and August, their young son, came to Intense the Farmers Market Conference last year because his wife, Helena, was speaking at the conference.
That talk.
It was so great.
We had a lot of fun.
We had a lot of good feedback on that from our attendees.
Did. Actually, you had the heart moment of the conference, I think, when Beverly Grant gave her talk about being a market manager in Denver and the food justice work she does there, and that she had lost her son. And I remember you and August coming up and giving her a hug.
I know. There wasn't a dry eye in the house.
Mine wasn't dry for like a day after that. That was a real moment. We're going to miss those hugs this year.
Yeah.
Yeah. COVID's definitely thrown a wrench in the plan for all that stuff. I will miss it too. And yeah, she just had such an amazing story and journey, and just hearing that just touched me so deeply. So yeah, a hug was necessary, and I'm so glad she allowed me to.
Yeah, it was wonderful. Hopefully we'll still have some camaraderie this year, but it is going to be live online.
Virtual
at the computer. So still not too late to register, by the way, if you want to slip
in
under the line. We got another week to go.
Come on, people.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, you want to just jump in, Matt, and just give us a little background. I know that you're farming now, but I heard that you were a market manager before you were a farmer. So if you just want to give us a little background about you, that'd be great.
Sure. Yeah. Let's see. So I'm 36 now, and been farming for about 6 years. And before I started farming, I was a farmers market manager for 2 years and operated 3 farmers markets a week and around the Bay Area. Some really large, some really small. Really great experience for me to meet a lot of other farmers and just small business owners, food producers, kind of learn how the farmers market world works, which was a good primer for me and Helena jumping into farmers markets ourselves and being on the other side of the table selling. So I kind of had learning the best of both worlds in that sense. It was just really fun for me too, before I even knew I was going to farm, to be part of a farmers market world, introducing customers, direct sales to the people, introducing customers to, farms and different types of produce. Like for me, like what the heck was a watermelon radish? I learned that at the farmers market. The first time I had a persimmon was at the farmers market. So learning seasonal foods kind of part of my journey being a farmers market manager, as me and Helena were learning about, kind of a localized food system and what that meant. So for me, becoming a farmers market manager, previously being like a food server, restaurant manager, was kind of a step in the right direction.
Yeah, that makes sense. A lot of logical sense. And also, like, building relationships with farmers, I'm sure you were then able to, like, pick those farmers' brains. You knew them, you could ask them questions, and I'm sure that helped.
Oh, yeah. The questions got a lot more specific in my last year, as I knew we were headed to becoming farmers ourselves. Like, how do you weed this? And like, what time of year do you grow this? And like, how are these beans so good? And so, yeah, we definitely, I was able to pick a lot of their brains. So and Helena was really learning a lot of the field work, hands-on stuff as she worked for farm. And so I was shaking hands and picking these guys' brains and figuring that out. And then learning the paperwork side of things, like, oh, we need general liability insurance. And like, this is what all the organic registration and certification looks like and stuff like that. So yeah, I was definitely doing my research while I was working as well. Mm-hmm.
Nice. You're on kind of an interesting piece of property, right? It's a municipally kind of sponsored, funded ag park, right?
Yeah, it's one of the first. It's pretty unique, and it's called a ag park, and it's an 18-acre parcel that the San Francisco Water Utility Commission owns, SFPUC for short. So government land in essence, and they've leased it out to originally a nonprofit that the nonprofit's goals was sort of sustainable agriculture and education, kind of on the urban edge. And a handshake agreement was made. They made water rates and land rates on the back of a napkin. And then the nonprofit in turn leased to farmers that were interested, usually 1 acre plots at a time, sometimes a little bit more. And now it's turned hands from the original nonprofit stage, which was holding that lease from the SFPC to the ACRCD, which is the Alameda County Resource Conservation District. I think I have that right. And so it's been a nice sort of evolution there because the ACRCD sort of has more resources and is able to manage it better. And I think there's currently 6 of us there, 6 farmers. We're on 2.5 acres. And I really like it because it's in Alameda County. I grew up in Oakland, which is in Alameda County, so I can say I farm in the same county that I grew up in. We didn't have to move like so far away from all our friends and family to farm. So we're kind of able to like be 20, 30 minutes away from Oakland, Berkeley, San Francisco, and still farm. And so I really like it. It's a beautiful little watershed area. There's a creek that goes by. So yeah, we farm on public land essentially.
That's great. So how do you establish kind of a security as you're building all the things that you're building and planting all the things you're planting? Do you have a long lease?
No.
Oh.
Is that
a sore subject? I'm sorry I said anything.
No, it's a real subject. I mean, it's the reality of the situation. So many of our, friends and family sort of like and are inspired by what we do, but also kind of like there's that cautious tale of like, one, it's on a field that you make lots of money in, and 2, like you're on a year-to-year lease, so it's it's been a little scary. We've advocated for ourselves for long-term leases. There's good faith that the ag park's going to stay an ag park, but yeah, it's a risk. I think this year is the first year we're going to sign a 2-year lease. And I think they're going to start on longer term leases. Technically, they were called evergreen leases. So
right.
We should be renewed as long as, we didn't burn the place down or something.
Right. Which wouldn't have been your fault.
Yeah.
I mean, you've had the fires come pretty close to your land 2 years, right?
Yeah, they got pretty close last year. I feel like with climate change and everything, if you live in the Bay Area, California, the card we draw is smoke and fire. So that's, we're already kind of starting to order a lot of masks now and try to prepare, make sure we have generators working and stuff like that. You never know what could happen. It's in the location, there's a freeway kind of bordering us and there's not a lot of trees. So I feel like, the farm is in a relatively good position, as opposed if we were on like some land with trees all around that. So I think we'll be okay in that. And, losing power makes it difficult because it's in the fall when you're still running your cooler, and have stuff. But the CSA model that we're running right now, we're really only having the cooler on one day. We harvest on Monday, coolers on Monday night, and we're delivering Tuesday. And then we harvest the day that we're delivering it to restaurants later in the week. So I think we'd be okay if we needed to, if we lose power and the generators aren't working. But yeah, all this to say, circling back to the stability, like kind of being okay with the feeling of not being okay, but having faith in what's happening. And we did have a scare in 2015 that they were there's some construction projects going on for a big visitor center in the area, and they needed a place to like prep all their equipment and stuff. And so someone in San Francisco, had the idea of like, well, we'll just move down these farms here. They're going to cut in about like 3 acres of the 18-acre ag park. And all of us, I remember distinctly, it was a week before our wedding, and had to have my father do the CSA delivery so we could like go to this meeting that we had to go to, and we packed the room with all the farmers there and community support, and was able to sort of isolate that someone had a bad idea and they need to like figure out a different place to level and gravel this area for their storage. So that got done somewhere else. But so yeah, every once in a while we'll have to fight, for something like this. But I think it's totally worth it because there's not a lot of prime agricultural land left in Alameda County.
Yeah, I think just being at farmers markets and having CSA programs and things, the fact that you develop those relationships with consumers can come in really handy when you get to one of those political situations, because packing the room's important. Those are all voters, and that's what those decision makers are worried about. So it's really handy to have those relationships with your customers, and they can get out there and they can bring their friends and family, and people develop such a heart connection with their farmer. That they're willing to stand up for them. So that can be handy. The fires are the worst. I will say we've talked to so many farmers that have said, "Oh, I'm going to leave California. I'm tired of the fires. I'm going to go somewhere where land is cheaper and there's no fires. I'm moving to Texas." And and then we've seen this last month, all these farmers get wiped out by snow in Texas. So I think you just, when you, like you say, you drew the smoke and fire card, there's something in your hand no matter where you are. So
no one's safe.
Nobody's safe.
Yeah, my neighbor and my coffee guy, who we trade produce for coffee every week. Little shout out to Cafe Santana. Richard likes to say the grass is, because I would say the grass is greener. He says the grass is green where you water it. So yeah, I mean, wherever you go, there's going to be a problem. So yeah, exactly. So
figuring it out where you are.
Yeah,
for sure. So Matt, what are the ways that you sell your produce right now? You have a CSA subscription program?
Yeah, we just opened up on the 1st for our summer CSA, and we are more than halfway through our winter CSA. The first time we've ever done a winter CSA. So nerves were high, but we planted a lot of stuff in the fall, and it carried through, and it's looking great. It's been really successful. I'm really liking the winter CSA. My plan is we're having a summer CSA, a 13-week summer CSA, and then we'll have a 13-week fall CSA, and then we'll take a couple weeks off and start up the winter CSA again. And then we mix in restaurants, weekly sales to 2 restaurants right now. And we kind of have this thing called a farm stand, where it's an online store people can order, and then they pick up at the farm the same day people pick up for the CSA. They can pick up for the farm stand. And that can be CSA members doing add-ons, or it can just be people that maybe the CSA is, it's too much for them or what have you. They're getting their feet wet. They can just order, whatever they want, $5, $10 of stuff, or $50 of stuff. So that's something we started when COVID first hit last March. They closed our local farmers market for a little while, and people were like scrambling, looking for, we had the grocery store scare. And so yeah, we were getting a lot of business then all the way through the year. And then we've just sort of carried it on. So that's kind of the way we're bringing in sales right now.
That's great.
Were you at the farmers market still at that point when they closed them, or you had left farmers markets before COVID, right?
Yeah, it was sort of, and that worked out, luckily, just kind of in our favor. It was the end of 2019. We're standing there in some November at the farmers market, and we're just burned out. And so we had decided this would be the end. We were going to go through the year, through the end of 2019, and then we were going to not do farmers markets for the foreseeable future and start the CSA back up.
Which farmers markets were you, prior to the end of 2019, which farmers markets were you selling at, and for how long were you guys there?
We were selling at the Pleasanton Farmers Market on Saturdays. That's a year-round market that It's been around for like 25 plus years, a really nice market. And we were there for probably 2 seasons. And then we were selling at the Stonestown Farmers Market in the city. And we were there. That was our second year being there as well, maybe third, I forget. So we're doing a Saturday, Sunday market. Mm-hmm.
So when you guys were there, can you just talk a little bit about like things that you liked about as a farmer selling at the markets, and then maybe some things that you didn't like about selling at the market that kind of motivated you? I know you guys said you're a little burned out being at the market, and Helena talked at the conference last year a lot about just getting burnt out being there, but kind of specifically just because we're talking to farmers market folks, like what kind of motivated your decision to leave that part of your business out?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I like to say there's pros and cons to all the different avenues. There's pros and cons to CSAs, to restaurants, and to farmers markets. And so starting with the pros for the farmers markets, like cash in hand every week is really nice. And all the other vendors that you become friends with, that you can trade with. So we go home with like, bread and apples and coffee and pastries and meat and all that sort of stuff. You're sort of like this whole bartering system that happens is really amazing. The relationships you have with customers, you kind of like remember to like, you're excited, you're bringing someone something to sample, or like they're going to bring you some food, and you kind of have all these working relationships with people, which is really nice. And then, just watching your stuff sell and then having that cash is really nice. And so we're able to, do well and establish ourselves and get our name out through the farmers market. Which is cool because then you meet other, every customer is someone, maybe another farmers market manager. They invite you somewhere else over here, or like it's a chef, and you meet a chef for a restaurant account. So there's a lot of different ways that the farmers markets are amazing, and there's just this big avenue for direct sales. And so we were part of the farmers market community from 2014 when we first started our farm through 2019. And we did every single one ourselves. There was one, we did two that we didn't. Once we were on a vacation, we had some friends cover. And another time I think we were working on the front farm and had our employees cover. So
did you see a big difference in sales?
They were pretty similar. But that's a worry, right? That's always a worry, big difference in sales. And so if and when we do go back to farmers markets again, we would definitely have people work it for us and train them and be able to, make sure we trust them with cash and stuff like that. I mean, that's part of the burnout too, is that we're doing it all ourselves. And so, it's just a lot for us on small acreage, on 2.5 acres, is also kind of the reasoning behind it as well, because you have to grow a certain way for farmers markets. Because say if you like tomatoes, we want to be your tomato people or your cucumber people. You come to us every week. Oh, we love that farm with the cucumbers or the tomatoes. So we got to make sure we have cucumbers and tomatoes every single week while the season lasts. So that means we have to dedicate a lot of space to, crops to that on the farm. And so the model of how we plant is for a farmer's market. Whereas for like a CSA, you need diversity. They don't want like just tomatoes every week. You need to have like celery and lettuce and arugula and spinach and tomatoes. And so we need to dedicate less land to one crop. And so you see how the models are kind of different. And so we went with farmers markets and restaurants, because the same thing with restaurants. If they like your tomatoes, they want to keep buying them. So we planted a certain way. So now we've switched up that model, and there's a lot of diversity on the farm now for the CSA specifically. So if we were to go back to farmers markets, we would probably tweak it a little bit, or just have one market where we're just, we're selling a diverse array of stuff, but our main go is the CSA, and that wouldn't change. So some of the cons to the to the farmers market, is just like, you're basically going and you're setting up your own little store. And it's a lot of work, because the day before you've been in the field harvesting, boxing it all up, and then you load it up early in the van, and then you get there early, a couple hours early, and you set up all your stuff. And then it's not like, so you're still kind of tired from the day before, and you're tired from setting up. And then it's not like you just get to sit down and like have some coffee and read, but now you got to turn your hat, and you're selling, and you're hustling, and you're upselling, and you're talking to people, because you just harvested all the stuff, you grew all the stuff, you weeded all the stuff, you need to sell as much as possible, so you stay busy. And then you got to break it down, put it all away in your van, and then you go home. And then that's when, like, I think a lot of farmers market managers and stuff, they don't really think about you anymore until you get close to setting up your market next week. But you got to imagine we're still going home, and then we got to unload all the stuff and put all the stuff back. And then there's leftover stuff. What do we do with that? Do we, like, throw it out in our field, or do we have to, like, I got some, there's a lot of good stuff you still have left over. And if you don't have a farmer's market the next day, you're bringing it to, now I got to call, like, my restaurant friends and try to hustle it off for a little cheaper. And so it's exhausting. I'm tired just thinking about it.
I never thought of, like, the aftermath of the market. Yeah. I think you're totally right with a lot of, I don't think about farmers.
What the farmers are doing in between.
I'm so tired. I'm like, I'm just going to go home and
exhausted.
Take a nap.
Yeah. And it's funny, Matt, since you've been a farmers market manager, you can probably see it from both sides. Like, I'll bet as a farmer during the week, you're not really thinking about your market manager until, the day that you get there to set up and make sure you're where you're supposed to be and nobody snuck into your spot. And, did they mention you on social media that week? So I don't think farmers think either that, I think they sort of think that, like you were saying, Justine, you don't think about them during the week. I think farmers also think that market managers sort of disappear and then magically reappear again the day of the market, as opposed to all the paperwork and the politics and things.
The maps
that you do in between. Right.
Yeah, I have a special place in my heart for farmers market managers because there's a lot that they go through and a lot of stuff to do and so much logistics. And middle management positions are really challenging anyway. You're getting it kind of from both sides. So I'd always, make sure I'm turning in my load list and saying hi and stuff like that. Get them a coffee once in a while. But
Farmer of the week.
There's other factors. There's another factor too that plays in all that. So you imagine, we're out in the field, we're harvesting it all, we're bringing it. We just talked about how hard all this is to set it up and stuff. And then say it rains or the weather is poor. Or the market is not necessarily like a neighborhood market where you get your dedicated customers every week. It's maybe more of a market where people descend to, right? Maybe there's a big football game or something. So you're not getting as much crowds. Well, all that swing of sales and money is really stressful. We'll plot out our cash flow at the beginning of every year. And I really need to it averages out, but you really need to hit 2,000 sales or 3,000 sales or whatever, because I'm paying labor for all this stuff and everything. And then if you have this random rainy day or 2 rainy days or a big sports event or something, and it's 500 sales or 600 sales or 700 sales, it doesn't, it's stressful. And it's also hard to, farming's already challenging with the weather and stuff. So then when the place you're selling at is can be a factor because of the weather too, that can really put a damper if all your eggs are in one basket in terms of sales at farmers market. So the CSA is a little bit better in that sense because if it's raining or not, I'm still dropping out the boxes and I've already collected the money. So
yeah, way more predictable. Yeah. I think probably our most successful farmers are the ones that do both, because I think you can hit some sales targets that you don't necessarily hit on the CSA side or some margin, but if you can do both, man, you're golden.
Yeah, having that consistency and predictability, I think, is really helpful. With the CSA, I'm sure provides that, and the restaurants, because they're you have an agreement with them. So
well, that was predictable until last year.
True. Yeah, it dropped, and then you got to stay on restaurants and make sure they pay too. You got to turn the hat the other way and make sure, hey, this is now you're. I have a lot where it's I'm $500,000, $800,000 behind. Someone's behind, and you got to you got to remind them. And then another thing is, we're very unique in the sense of we're only 2.5 acres. So if you're a 20-acre farm, 15-acre farm, 50-acre farm, you can you have so much more stuff that farmers markets are a no-brainer, but when you only have 4 rows of cabbages and you need to sell them, that's when those the market, the inconsistency of the market is sort of, it's scary for us, but if you have acres of it, then it's, so I feel in that sense, bigger farms can handle those swings a little bit more than smaller farms can. So that's a good thing for farmers market managers to know, is the acreage of your farms that sell there. I think that's really, so many of them don't know, a small farm, well, it's a 500 acre farm, still small in the grand scale of things, but I think it's good to know, the acreage of your farm so that you can have a better relationship with them.
Yeah, and that's helpful, I think, for consumers to know too, or shoppers. We have shoppers that are like, oh, well, why isn't this farm back? Or maybe they know they have a CSA that they love and see, like I'm thinking of like Dickinson Farm, like
Right.
I think it's like 2 acres or something, and it's like, oh, we'd love to have them at their market, but it's like
They
that
should
would
have
be
the
so hard for
capacity.
them. Yeah, but they have a really successful CSA, so I think that's just like helpful for people to wrap their minds around. It totally makes sense when you explain it.
Yeah.
What else should farmers market managers know? And what would entice you to return to a farmers market? And maybe nothing, maybe just the size of your property and stuff doesn't make it make sense. But are there things that market managers could do that would entice really small farmers to attend and keep attending, make it more valuable for them?
Yeah, I mean, we probably will at some point go back to a farmer's market in the area. Not necessarily out of necessity though. And I think my big thing when I was a farmer's market manager is I really started to figure out like all the fraud that was happening. And that really bothered me on a level. You know, we would find stickers that people are buying and reselling. And so, you know, they're buying stuff that's not quite seasonal. And you have so many farmers market managers, you know, that are just hired on that don't really know too much about farming and don't know too much about what's seasonal. You know, why we have eggplants in December, you know, and stuff like that. And so as a small farmer, like, and you're out there hustling your own, you know, your own stuff, and then you're competing with like these big farms that are just buying and reselling for cheaper. And then you only made $200 and you got to pay the $50 like stall fee. Like, it's really disheartening. So I think sort of trying to have more disciplinary actions on the farmers that we maybe have an idea are hustling, buying and reselling, and maybe spending some, bringing in some more farmers that are legit. And also sort of, you know, sometimes farmers market managers get a little, we like to fill the market and we want the market to have a lot of diverse array of stuff. I know I did. But I think we should also be thinking about how many people are selling tomatoes, how many people are selling strawberries, you know? So it's like, you know, I've had so many farmers market managers come up to me and be like, oh, we got another, you know, like they're excited to tell me like they got another cool farm in. And immediately I'm like seizing up on the inside because like I'm thinking competition and sales going down, but also like I'm excited for them because I'm a farmers market manager too. And then we try to have this mentality of like, it doesn't matter, you know, we create our own customers, you know, we're not out there worried about our competition and there's enough to go around, but sometimes there's not enough to go around.
Yeah, it's a real tricky balance. It's finding that sweet spot, right? Because you attract more customers if you have more choices. So, you know, to an extent, making that market bigger, but you got to look at the tipping point for each product.
Yeah.
Right. And so exactly. So like, can the 500 acre farm maybe that specializes in, you know, well, there'll be some, you know, say stone fruits or whatever, but then they also will do some vegetables, you know, maybe they shouldn't bring their tomatoes in or something like that. You know, maybe we can have some of the biggest farms not bring all these products because they're in 30 market week and they could bring them somewhere else because you want your smaller guys that specialize in something to be able to have more of a pie for that. So, you know, some sort of balance like that because, yeah, I mean, a $500 swing to a small farm in a market is a lot, you know, so yeah, sort of having an understanding about like what's in your market, and how much of, you know, each product and then trying to, you know, make sure that folks aren't buying and reselling and selling stuff for $1, $2 a pound and everyone flocks to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that curating is, I mean, that's the genius behind the difference between a good farmer's market that benefits everybody and one that doesn't. It's making those choices, constantly rebalancing. We were actually having a conversation with a farm this week that wants to come in, and they grow potatoes, which nobody else grows down here. So they grow potatoes and sweet potatoes, and I really want them to come sell those, but I'm looking at their booth at another market, and there's a ton of berries, and we already have Central Coast guys doing berries. Yeah, we've got enough berries. I feel like we can't take another berry person without throwing the balance off. So I'm trying to talk these guys into leaving the berries at home, bringing us those potatoes.
Yeah.
You know, we'll see if it'll fly. But I'm sure the berries are like a
and
big
that's margin. A lot of work. I mean, it's a lot of work to do that. It's a lot of logistics and negotiating. And you know, I always found like once you let someone in, it's really hard to get them out.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So, it's hard to be like, hey, why did you put berries on your table?
Yeah.
You're not allowed to have them. And they're like, oh, but I'm already here and I picked them. and then you're kind of like, okay, I guess you can sell them today, and then that turns into next week and next week and next week.
Yeah. You have to be hardcore.
Yeah.
That's
and it's that's challenging to be in. I always thought it'd be cool too, and farmers market associations only have so much budget themselves, but I always thought it'd be cool to be able to visit the farm before you let them in.
Yeah, we make an attempt to do that.
That application looks good, and maybe you're able to go out there and like tour it and see some stuff and get a better feel for it.
It's funny in California because we accept California growers, and honestly, if we were doing like a 100-mile diet, we should be not taking any Northern California people, and we should be bringing farmers from Mexico because we're in San Diego. We're really close to the border, but we can't do that in California. Certified markets, it's all got to come from California. But some of our growers are in Fresno. I mean, they drive from Fresno to San Diego to sell. Yeah. And I was so excited. A few years ago, I was at a conference that turned out to be just paralyzingly boring. And so I was in Fresno. I thought, what, I'm going to ditch this. I'm going to go out and visit our Fresno farmers. And it was pretty interesting to see who was growing what and, really check out those organic claims and
what their farms look like.
Pet the water buffalo. Yeah. It was cool.
Yeah. I mean, you make up a good point too. It's hard. It's like hard for you to travel and take a staff up there, and folks aren't necessarily trained to look at like what, how many strawberries that they're growing should be able to provide to your market every week and stuff like that too. So I know the company I used to work for, the Pacific Coast Farmers Market Association, we wrote up some, we were trying to create a position for an inspector, and they ended up creating one, which is good, because they're the largest farmers market association in the country.
Yeah, they're huge.
It was good for them to have. It's good for them to have some sort of regulation, and we worked along. I also think it's good for farmers market associations to be able to pick up the phone and call other farmers market associations and ask them, like, "Hey, have you heard of this farm? You think they're cool? Like, how about this vendor?" Because I would do that with AIM, Agricultural Institute of Marin, a lot. And and their inspector, Tyler, is a really nice guy. And we would chat a lot. And just I think, doesn't have to be so fiercely competitive that we can't chat with other associations and learn some stuff and swap information too, for the benefit of the market and the consumers. So,
for sure. We actually have a session.
Regularly.
We've got a session coming up at the conference on coalitions of markets in the same area. And one of the people that is going to be there was on Tent Talk a while ago, and she was talking about it was just such a revolutionary act to call another farmers market manager and say, could we talk? Could we maybe actually even meet? If people see us, would that be terrible? Because so many market managers have this sense that we're competitors, and in some sense we're competing for, I really want that farmer to come to my market, and if he's at this market on the same day, he won't come to my market. So there's a little bit of competition there, but I think we all need to remember that it's not us competing against each other, it's all of us competing against Ralph's and Vaughn's. And that, we need to work together we get such a small percentage of the average person. The number of people who use farmers markets as their primary grocery shopping source is so tiny. Yeah. And if we all banded together and made markets better, and granted, we would need a lot more farmers, we could pick up a lot more of that business. And let's remember who the enemy is. It's not other farmers markets.
Yeah. It's Ralph.
That's right. It's Ralph.
And Vaughn.
That's right.
Yeah, absolutely. I forget that too. And so it's really important. So I like to call it like friendly competition, but we should be able to pick up the phone, and we're competing against this large scale, industrial food system. And so we need to stick together and be allies. Definitely.
Yeah, for sure. I think San Diego County Ag Department, is pretty aggressive comparatively from other departments around the country. And our rules are pretty strict. I think our inspectors are out at farms a lot, and they're certainly at our markets constantly. So, even though we don't get out to the farms very often as market managers, I do feel pretty good about the reselling, the farmers that are out there reselling. I know it's an issue in a lot of places. And San Diego has been an issue before, but I feel like our inspectors do a good job of making sure that they're checking what's in the ground and what's on the tables and comparing those two things. So
and at least a lot of our farmers are very aware of that too. And they have some competition amongst themselves, and they're always like, is that person really they call the inspector on each other.
Yeah.
They call the inspector on each other. They
For
tattle
sure.
a lot to us. I get a lot of farmers telling me like, hey, check this out. Like that person shouldn't have that there.
It's helpful.
Yeah, it's helpful. As much as I'm like, okay. But it's
I
helpful.
feel like a middle school principal. or
Yeah,
something
but it's
that.
like they're out there in the area and they know the farms a lot better than I do. That's for sure. So it does help open my eyes. And I think once you get the reputation as a market manager, as someone who takes that seriously and has a really firm integrity about it, we attract the really great farms because they want to be in our market. So as market managers, I think if you can just get that reputation for having that integrity and not getting, there's kind of a desperate feeling as managers that you want to just have everybody at your market and be like the best, biggest market. But sometimes that can lead to you letting in some questionable farmers and vendors as well. So I think kind of holding your ground on that, your long-term reputation is a lot, more important than the short-term getting this kind of questionable farm in.
Well, we also have an advantage in that California doesn't allow reselling legally, and
it isn't really illegal.
so there's some expectation that you're not having resellers. In a lot of the country, we have listeners from all over, that's not necessarily the case. And in some places, it's considered acceptable. It's certainly legal to allow resellers in your market, and it's a tricky business. If you're going to call it a farmer's market, let's have those farmers there.
Yeah. I used to think it was all sort of a big fairy tale and everything was grand and great, and then I was like, oh man, it's kind of like the Wild West out here at the farmers market. Folks are hustling, and so it's not really regulated that much, and it's starting to be more, like you said. And I know recently, in the last number of years, California has some state inspectors and stuff. I used to pick up the phone and talk to different county agricultural inspectors and commissioners and stuff, just to kind of have a working relationship with them too. And they'd pass on information too. And so that was all helpful. So I feel like as a market manager, I would do that. And that was something that was kind of unique. There was only a couple of us that were taking those strides at the time. I think you're really right. Talking about integrity really matters too. And farmers will want to keep coming back if they feel like the place has integrity, and you're able to make money and stuff. So all those things kind of mix together, and kind of having some, check-ins, monthly check-ins with your managers and making sure everyone's on the same page. And if they have questions or don't feel comfortable, and being able to speak on that. And so you can continue to kind of have, better managers that can ideally stick with your company for years, so they kind of have a solid understanding.
Yeah, that's important too. Really well-educated managers. So, which of course it's a little plug for us. That's what we do. We help train those managers and vendors and farmers. So one more thing before we wrap up, Matt. So while you're thinking about whether or not you might go back to farmers markets in the future, and you've got a successful CSA going, you've got another project, right? How's the olive oil business?
The olive oil business, I really love it. This is kind of my thing. Half Italian, I feel like culturally I'm just drawn to it. And this kind of first was presented to me years ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago now. Susan, who was the current manager at the ag park, knew of an olive grove in Livermore, only like 10, 15 miles away. And they were looking for someone to take care of the trees and stuff. And so that was the first time it dropped on my radar. And then there was an organized effort by the Livermore Public School that has an agricultural department. The teacher was going to bring out his students and a couple of neighbors that were interested, and if I wanted to come out and help. And so we helped. We just did like a half-day harvest, and I got to use one of the electrical harvesting rakes that they have. It's an air-powered rake. It's really cool. It kind of like clamps like this. It has like fingers and clamps on a long pole, and you hold it and you're just like brushing the tree's hair, so to speak, and the olives are falling on the nets you put out down below, and people are picking by hands. And then we took it to the mill, and they pressed it for us. So you got to see the olive oil come out, and I was hooked. Like my share that day was 15 gallons. So I left with 3 5-gallon buckets full of olive oil that we were giving to our friends and family, and it lasted the whole year. We just didn't have to buy olive oil. It was so good too. And so I kind of kept my eye on that property and stayed in communication with them. And then I got to meet the realtor and who brought me to the owner. And we sat down for a meeting, me, August, and Helena, when August was really small. And we basically drew up a lease. And we drew up like a 5-year lease, taking it on slowly because a big parcel. It's 10 acres. There's 1,200 trees. It's way beyond what I can manage right now with the capital we have and the labor we have. So we did a harvest last year and the year before. This last year's harvest was smaller. The trees are dry farmed. We're working on getting irrigation on them. We're working on pruning them. The year before that was a good harvest. We got 110 gallons of extra virgin olive oil. And then, my wife is just amazing at marketing and our Instagram following and everything. So we were able to sell it all. I mean, we sold to 25 different states. We're sending our olive oil all over the place, all through Instagram. And then this last year it was a small harvest, but we went for it anyway. And we got, I think it was there was a high yield of oil. So we got 45 gallons. So we're keeping 10 to 15 for ourselves, and we sold all the rest in 6 hours off Instagram. It went and we sold it all out. And then my friends and family that come help, I always took them up with a gallon. And it's just a fun, farming to me feels like why I'm even farming now. It just feels like there's a strong connection with the land, and you're working outside with your hands, and it just feels like a good connection, kind of stuff we're meant to do. And so our olive harvesting and being under the trees, it's different than being around the vegetables because you're under all of these trees. And so it feels really good. And so I really like it. And then having my family all come out and help, and we're all up on ladders harvesting, and it's just, we're working together. It just feels like there's this cultural pull too. So we've been dedicating 1 day a week to be out there with my employee, and we've been pruning because this is the time to prune. And then we're working on getting irrigation on. And with the harvest, there's a heavy yield year and a light yield year. So this last year was the light yield year. And so we should be expecting at least, I'm hoping, between 100 and 300 gallons this fall. So yeah, if any of you are up in the Bay Area around the fall, we'll probably start harvesting. We'll do a couple of days in October or November. So
just come out and comb those trees' hair, right?
That sounds fun.
Yeah.
Let's just go do it, and then we can get tiny bottles of olive oil for next year's swag bags,
Ooh,
right?
That'd be fun.
There you go. Absolutely. So it's a lot of fun, and then it's also another thing long term to think about too. California and water. Olive trees are really drought resistant, and I just feel like it could be a really good source of income from us if things get tight with water, and just it's also good to diversify. So we have vegetables, and then we have olive oil too. So it just kind of felt like a no-brainer, but it's still a big project. Part of me is do I really want to do all this, or do I really just want to buy bulk olive oil and just have 10 gallons for ourselves? But no,
and sell it at the farmer's market.
Just kidding.
Yeah, it'd be a great product at the farmer's market. People at the farmer's market love olive oil. That's true.
It's a nice shelf-stable product.
That's true.
I would assume as a farmer, it's everything's so
shelf-stable for the farmer's market. That's good.
Yeah, and just for farmers to have something
it's nice to be able to bring a product home and then bring it back again. And unlike, tomatoes or cabbages that you got to throw out. So it is nice in that sense. So maybe someone will drag us back to the farmer's market one of these years. But as of now, I feel like I have my plate full with raising a child and being part of this family, and then running a small business as well.
Well, you're doing a great job of all of it, and I appreciate you taking time out of all that to come talk to us.
Yeah, of course.
Out of all of that.
All of
that. Oh, you knew I was going there.
Oh, that's a good one.
Well, one day August will be old enough to work the booth at the farmer's market.
Yeah, that's right. There you go.
That's when you'll come back.
Yeah.
That's right.
August. Oh yeah.
Recruit those kids.
August's olive oil. Live at the farmer's market. Thanks for talking to us today, Matt.
Thank you so much, Matt, and we'll hopefully talk to you soon and try to make it out in the fall to comb some olive tree hair.
That's right.
Let's do that. Yeah,
Okay.
for sure.
Sounds
All right. Well,
good.
nice chatting with you all.
Yeah.
Have a great day.
All right, you too.
Bye.
Bye,
Bye.
Matt. Farmers markets are all about community, and all of us, operators, farmers, and vendors, keep learning. To learn what's happening from people just like you in various parts of the country, or share what's happening in your area, we have terrific conversations and people sharing resources over in our private Facebook group, the Farmers Market Pros Community. Please find us there, answer the 3 qualifying questions, and join the group. You can also message us on Instagram at Farmers Market Pros or send us an email at connect@farmersmarketpros.com. Thanks so much for listening to Tent Talk. Please leave us a review on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you access your podcasts, and tell us and others how you're enjoying Tent Talk. If you're listening on YouTube, give us a thumbs up, and be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss our next episode. Tent Talk, the Farmers Market podcast, is proudly produced by Farmers Market Pros, where passion meets profit. Today's episode was recorded and edited by Justine Marzoni Mead. Original music by David Mead. Thank you so much for listening today, and we'll have another great episode next week. Tune in.